So without further ado, next up, we have the man who helped start it all. Born in Rice Lake, Wisconsin in 1940, Foster Fries is a first-generation college graduate. At the University of Wisconsin, Foster earned a degree in business administration, served as president of his fraternity, and was named one of the 10 most outstanding senior men. Foster then enrolled in the Reserve's Officer Training Corps, where he trained as an infantry platoon leader and served as an intelligence officer for the 1st Guided Missile Brigade in El Paso, Texas. In 1974, Foster and his wife, Lynn, launched Fries Associates, a growth-oriented investment management business driven by individual company research. Foster has devoted a significant resources to philanthropy. He has received many awards and recognitions and believes that private individuals are called to carry others' burdens rather than relying on the government to do so. Through his web presence at fosterfries.com and his Campfire blog, Foster works to promote the Founding Fathers' principles of free enterprise, limited government, constitutional government, fiscal responsibility, and traditional American values. He believes we can find effective, innovative, private sector solutions to many of the problems we face. So give it up for Foster Fries.
He's just made in America, born in a heartland, raised up a family, King James and Uncle Sam.
I can't thank you enough for that sitting ovation. I appreciate it so much. You know, I love most of those accolades he talked about. They're all true. And I'm so grateful that people recognize me as being rich, successful, generous, funny, brilliant, handsome. No one gives me any credit for how humble I am. And that has annoyed me a great deal. So I'm writing a book to put it to bed for once and for all. The name of the book is entitled America's 10 Most Dynamic Leaders of Today and How I Trained the Other 9. Now let me share some thoughts that might be helpful to you. I want to talk a little bit about productivity and some management techniques that you can implement in your life, and then a little bit about messaging. What I did in building my career, and we got up to $15.7 billion of assets under management, which generated $157 million of income for our team with no advertising. And we're incredibly productive in how we managed our time. I would encourage you all to create the system that works so well for me, a system of 3.3 by 5 cards, those little index cards. Put on that card whatever topic it is, any goal, any project, only one per card. And at night when you go to bed, you want to say, gee, I hope I don't forget this tomorrow, I hope I don't get for that tomorrow, because you got every single thing you want to do on those cards. I had a blue card for all of my personal agendas. You know, get a haircut, get my wife a present, get the oil change in the car, and a red card for all my business goals. Hire a new accountant, open an office in Jackson Hole, and then I had yellow cards for specific targets that I wanted to look out to check out for my investment work. Look out at United Widget, check out Compaq Computer. Then, taking those 3 colored cards, every morning I go in the office and go through all 3 packs and pick out the things I want to work on that week and then arrange them in order of priority. And always work on the top card. So often we have A priorities and C priorities. Well, gee, if we just get all those C priorities away before lunch, when I come back from lunch, I'll be able to work on my A priority. Try to avoid that. It's very hard to do. But take the A priority and divide it into chunks so you always are working on an A priority. The C priorities will eventually disappear because of time, or they'll become A priorities. Always work on that top card. It takes a lot of discipline, but it'll be huge to your success. Secondly, I had a time log. You know, lawyers keep time logs so they can bill their people properly. I had mine in 5-minute increments. So when I'd come in the office, I'd put 7:05, arrive. 7:10, took a call from my golf pal. 7:25, read the Wall Street Journal. 7:35, called a client. At the end of the day, I could look at how I spent my time. And there's only 2 ways I'm going to succeed in my life as a money manager, as being responsible for other person's assets. One is to attract and hold clients, and 2, make money for them. Everything else was so far less important. So when I go through my chart at the end of the day, my log, I put a blue line that everything was related to client interaction. I'd put a green line that was everything dedicated to making money for them. Call the chief executive officer of the company, call the competitors of the company, call the customers of the company. And then I put a red line that everything else that didn't fit into those two boxes. So I was very sensitive to, I put down, headed to the bathroom. I'd write that down, headed to lunch. And I could call up, have my secretary call the lunch counter. I could get on my car, go over to the drugstore where I had this triple thick shake and a hamburger. I can still see it, it looks so good. And I could be back to my office in 17 minutes. Time is the biggest resource that you possibly have. So we invented something that I call voiceless communication. And this will really blow everybody's mind. This, people are going to think you're crazy when I tell them about this. I told all my guys and gals, I don't want any of you talking to each other. I don't want any of you talking to each other. I don't want any meetings. We had 3 meetings a year in a room with no chairs. So if you get in an environment where you can lead people to avoid meetings and to try to communicate in written format versus voice, it'll be unbelievable what the productivity will do. So I would encourage, in fact, I'm asking you tonight, when you have a spare moment, take a page out of some magazine, maybe 2 pages, and read it to yourself and time it. Then read it out loud to yourself and time it. I want you to do that so you get embedded in your mind. That'll take you almost 2 times longer to listen to that than to read it. Then I had my team, when I got them all together in a room, standing up with no chairs, I said, all right, here, take that same article and write it out on a piece of paper and pencil. After 2 lines, they got the point. It'd take them for a half hour to write that. So we coined an axiom which was critical to our productivity. The eyes are faster than the ears. You can read something faster than you can listen to it. But the tongue is faster than the pen. You can say something faster than you can write it. So if we want everything coming into you, you're our boss, everything we want coming in written format to you, how do we get it in a written format that doesn't take us forever to do it? And we had a bunch of at-home moms with a transcription service, and so a recording machine, so I could pull out my cell phone. I'd be cross-country skiing, and I had an idea. And I'd say, Jim, let's make sure you check out aerial technology next Monday because I hear they have a really hot new product. And then check in with Jim because he's checked it before. Back in my pocket, off I'm skiing. That would instantly, within 30 seconds, gets transmitted to as many people as I wanted. So that required everybody in our firm to have a fax machine. You could not send a fax to Freeze Associates, attention, Joe, Mary, Bill. It had to go to each one of you. Now that costs a little money to put into place. But that allowed me, instead of walking into my secretary's office and say, hey, Debbie, I need a trip to Atlanta on Friday at 5 o'clock, or buzzing her and same thing. Her office is right next to me. If I buzzed her, she'd be on the phone talking to somebody important. Oh, just a minute, Foster's bugging me, or buzzing me. Yeah, I kind of bother her, so she'd say buzz. So she'd hang up, take my call. Debbie, I need a trip to Atlanta 5 o'clock on Friday. Okay, I'll take care of it. She'd try to call the person back, person's gone, had to leave for something. So what this meant with this development of voiceless communication, by using a little fax where I just write a little note and zap it to her, she sees a fax coming up, she can deal with that in terms of her order priorities when she wants to deal with it, and not to my immediate buzz or my immediate walk in the office. So this meant all of the people in my firm were never interrupted by anybody else in the firm. They could work the entire day uninterrupted by meetings or uninterrupted by people buzzing them on the phone or walking into their office. Now, as I describe this, you're going to realize that hardly anybody looks at the world like this. But as a result of this process, I can have enough money to fly out here in a jet and talk to 400 awesome women, because we generated a lot of productivity and a lot of cash from the $800 of accumulated leave pay that my wife and I had when we started our effort. Here's another small little tip. When you call someone, everybody doesn't have an iPhone. If you call a landline, always leave your callback number first. How many times you listen to a phone call, a 5-minute phone call, and say, okay, Foster, I got to go now. Call me back at 656. I've listened to a 5-minute conversation 3 times and still barely caught the number. Always leave your callback number at the beginning of the message. Hi, this is Foster calling. Can you call me back? 307-690-8167 slowly, and then give your message. To have a good day, you really should have a rep. What's a rep? R for relationship time. Spend time with people. Lunch, tennis, golf, whatever. Spend time with people. Have relationships with people that day. E, exercise. Exercise is probably the most important thing we can do to create serotonin, to create endorphins, which keep us alive and generous. I mean, it's hard to believe I'm 98 years old, right? I mean, I exercise. And then P is productivity. I one day got up at 5 o'clock in the morning, couldn't sleep, went in my office. I worked so hard for like all day long. I got so much work done. At 4 o'clock suddenly, I should have been thrilled with getting so much work done in that amount of time, nonstop. But I was sort of miserable. I had no time with people, and I had no exercise. So I encourage you, every day you have a rep. Another little idea that might be helpful in communicating with people, never use an acronym. Invariably, somebody will be confused of what that acronym means. So I train all my people. You first say Central Intelligence Agency, then you can say CIA. Or you say Federal Bureau of Investigation, then you can say FBI. Now everybody knows CIA and FBI, and if we train people to use the full name then, they're less likely to say, hey, my dad worked for the DOD. I was sitting next to a college-educated man, and the host says DOD. He didn't know that was the Department of Defense. I'm talking to a doctor who says, my wife got her EOB. I had no clue that was explanation of benefit. Another young woman says, I'm trained to be a PA. I didn't know that was physician's assistant. So we all have a tendency, because we're interacting with people that we always know and see every day, that we get familiar with these acronyms. The military and the medical profession are so typical of it. So if you just take another fraction of a second to use the exact word, you'll be able to communicate more successfully, so you won't have someone sitting there trying to figure out what the acronym means that can't hear what you say in the next half minute or so. Never use an acronym. In fact, I'm being a little outrageous by saying that to use an acronym is almost rude, because you're kind of posing somebody something that they don't know what it's all about. So speak so the person can understand you and what you're trying to say. And as part of this, I don't think it's a good idea to ever ask a person a question that challenges your database. Do you know who Michael Jordan is? Do you know what IBM, do you know what computer? Because if you do that, people feel uncomfortable because their base of knowledge is being challenged. And they don't like to say, oh yeah, I know that, because there might be a follow-on question. And they don't want to say no, because most people should really know who Michael Jordan is. So there's a, this story's a little bit rocky but I'll tell it anyway because it tells the point. There's this huge confab in London where every person of every political stripe is there. But in order to know know this joke, you have to know who Clement Attlee is. Now, if I asked to raise of hands how many people know who Clement Attlee is, it's a person from back a while, I bet there's a good chance that a lot of you wouldn't know who Clement Attlee is. So if to tell a joke, normally you say, do you know who Clement Attlee is? No, I don't. Then I describe, well, he's a famous socialist in England. So instead, I say there's this big confab in London, and every political stripe was there, including that famous guy, what was his name? Clement Attlee, the famous socialist. Now, I've given you information that Clement Attlee is a famous socialist. And so, therefore, you can understand that this is a joke that Charles Krauthammer told, where it's a guy joke, frankly. Winston Churchill goes to the urinal, and Clement Attlee comes in and walks into the next to him, whereupon Winston moves down to, and Clement says, Winston, what'd you do that for? He says, Winston, anything, or Clement, anytime you use saying large, private, working property, you try to nationalize it. So it's a guy joke, I'm sorry. But you get the point. Don't challenge people's knowledge base by saying, do you know this, or do you know that, or what? Just give them information without talking down to them. Don't tell them that Compaq Computer makes computers. Instead, give them information that they might not know. It's like, did you realize, I mean, I was surprised, you'd say, Compaq Computers sold more computers in Japan last month than Dell. So you've given the information that you need them to know that Compaq Computer makes computers. Now, there's a big thing that probably won't play into your life for a while until you get into a management role, but it's the issue of annual reviews. Yeah, everybody's got this annual review. Instantly, where's the timer? Because I have no idea. Someone's supposed to tell me when to, where are you? Here. I can't see you back there. Aren't there any empty chairs up here someplace? Why don't we just yell out 5 minutes, all right, or 10 minutes, because I have no idea how long I'm going. Annual reviews can be so destructive, and they take so much of people's time. You sit the person down and say, gee, you've done a great job here, you're just so great, you're so well by employees, but we really want to talk to you about chewing gum. Well, all of a sudden to that person, that's all that person can think about is the negatives that directed to them, whatever that small thing might be. And also, if you had a portfolio of stocks, you wouldn't wait till the end of the year to evaluate them and correct them. So at Freeze Associates, we did it every time something came up. If a correction needed to be made on Tuesday, we made it by Tuesday or Wednesday. We didn't wait to the end of the year in order to critique person or to affirm him. So the given reason they do annual reviews is probably to affirm people and to make corrections. You should be doing that every day with your people as the leaders that you are already and will become more. Don't be nervous about delegating things. I realized it took me 22 minutes to drive to work and 22 minutes to drive back home. 44 minutes, 215 working days, you add up the numbers. How many hours is that I was spent driving my car? So I hired a driver for $15, $16 an hour. I hired someone else to get my oil changed, to pick up my prescriptions, to go to the laundry, to do everything except attract and hold clients and make money for them. And so the more you can delegate that, even people say, oh, geez, there's that stuffy Foster Freeze thinking, what's he got a driver for? But I accomplished so much more in those 44 minutes each day, over 250 work days, however it is, that try to figure out what it is that you contribute that's most important. Let me tell you a little story about a lighthouse keeper who was confronted, who was asked by some older people, we're really cold at night. Could you give us a little oil from your lighthouse? Here it is. Suddenly a younger couple came and said, we're having a hard time having enough light to educate our kids. Could you give us some little oil for our lamps? Sure enough. So he kept doing all these nice kids to the point, or nice gifts to people who were asking for very reasonably kind things, and he was so kind. He ran out of oil one night, and his ship crashed on the rocks that he was supposed to be warning people about, and 300 sailors died. Now, what's the point of that story? What is your lighthouse mission? What is this thing that God created you that you can do that other people can't do as well, but that harnesses your strengths? What is your lighthouse mission? And try to spend as much time as you can doing that as you possibly can. Most of my life, my lighthouse mission was helping people build their retirements and building their net value and providing scholarship for students by making money for the universities and the various charities I supported. That was my lighthouse mission. So the more time you can spend in your lighthouse mission and not be distracted by all these other nice things that the fellow keeping the lighthouse was doing, which didn't wind up with the greatest situation. And as part of that, ties in the whole idea, as you hire people and bring people onto your team, I would encourage you to think not so much as to where they've been and what their past is, or not even so much where they are today, but think about what they can become. Always look and have hope for people as to what they can become. And this is taking place right now in our electoral process. Everybody's so concerned about what the perceived vulgarities and the degradation of people that Donald Trump has done. But I was just at Muhammad Ali's celebration, and got a chance to talk to all of his fans and his, his in the room ahead of time before we went out to our seats. And Muhammad Ali was so revered, but in his early days, you can go back and see all the really harsh things he said about white people. He was a very unfriendly person at time, but yet he grew into the stature of being so loved, and by company, invited me, a born-again Christian, into his home to visit, and having become best friends with Billy Crystal, an Orthodox Jew. So never give up as to what people can become, especially when they're exposed to other people who have the kind of values we would like to have. The other point is to harness people's strengths and pretty well try to ignore their weaknesses. Put somebody else in that place of weakness. Maybe, Donald Trump doesn't have the best diplomatic speech, but maybe someone else in our movement does. So when Donald Trump says we ought to have a hiatus on bringing Muslims into our country till we find out who the terrorists are and who aren't, that was a statement that alarmed a lot of people as to, it's racist, suddenly it's racist. Yet what did Ted Cruz say? Ted Cruz, more skilled in the political arena, said we should not allow any immigrants, he didn't say Muslims, we should not allow any immigrants into the United States where they're coming from countries where ISIS is active, which is all 57 Muslim countries as far as I know. But he said the same thing, but he said it in a different way. So harness people's strengths, have hope for what people can become, and try to minimize their shortcomings. Now let me migrate a little bit to, and if I'm getting bored, you can check out your iPhones and tool with them, whatever you want to do. I can appreciate, Charlie said he wanted me to talk about messaging and productivity, so I got to do what Charlie says. I'd like to have, so let's get to messaging. We have a tendency, for those of who identify as conservatives, and I actually don't even like the term conservative because in many ways I'm a progressive in that I want to have school choice. I want to be able to have parents choose what school they want to do. That's going to change things. That's more progressive. Who are the conservatives? The conservatives are the teachers' unions. They want to dig in and say, no, we're going to conserve the existing system where people can have those kind of choices. So in the messaging, our side has a tendency to throw raw meat to our base, so to speak, to get them motivated. I maintain that's the wrong strategy. Instead, we ought to try to appeal to all Americans. The message that we have is for all Americans. It's not just for conservatives. It's the bring the promise to our country of that shining city on a hill. So when we think of the little kids as we're sitting here scrubbing through garbage dumps over in Nairobi looking for food, that we can be a solution to that problem once we get our act together. When you get on an airliner, say, if the oxygen deploys, put it on your face first before you try to help your kids. We have to get our act together first in America before we can help the world and be everything God intended us to be to solve the world's problems. So let's try to think of how do we use words that appeal to everybody. On this issue of defund Planned Parenthood. Defund Planned Parenthood. What's that going to do to the other side? They're going to dig in. Maybe you saw Rick Santorum go on The View and just left Whoopi Goldberg speechless. So he says, I think it's a smarter idea if we reallocate Planned Parenthood funds to the existing women's health care centers, which are quite prevalent throughout the United States. In Iowa alone, there's 113 women health care centers financed by the federal government, and George Bush was instrumental in doubling those. Because if we do that, the 4 or 5 offices of Planned Parenthood, it's not going to be hard to reallocate the people that go there. But when you go to the women's health care centers, they don't just get contraceptives and sexually transmitted disease issues and abortions. They get more. They get dealing with hypertension, with diabetes. So how can Whoopi Goldberg and the women on fire just, what could they say? So just think about the words we use to try to present ourselves in a winsome way that we're not trying to beat the other guy in the corner. In business, you always want to give your adversary a door of opportunity to save face so he can be a part winner too. Too often in the political process, it isn't, hey, I want to create a win-win situation. It's I want to win, I want you to lose. The more we can help the other side feel that they have a tinge of victory also, it's fine. And compromise is sometimes a dirty word, but we should compromise somewhat when we get a little bit more of what's good, but we should never compromise when we get a little bit more of what's bad. Now let's use another set of terminology. Defend the Second Amendment. Defend the right to bear arms. To me, that sounds like something you give the Princeton and Yale debating teams to talk about. Why don't we morph the language to this? Quote, we want to preserve the right to protect our lives and the lives of our families. We want to protect the right to protect our lives and lives of our families. And then add to that, yeah, give somebody applause. Whoever started that applause, I want to see you after and buy you a coffee. Thank you. So then add to that, oh no. Okay, really quick. Add to that, very quickly, I'm going to stop and ask questions. Thank you for that. Add to that 30% of gun purchasers are women. Then add to that Hillary Clinton has been guarded with armed guards since 1983 and has no idea of the kind of dangers. So with that, I have about 3 more little quick ones, which I will completely cut out so I can ask for some questions. But let's just do the final one. Everybody talks about who's the enemy, the Taliban, Al-Qaeda. It shifts. I want you all to think about using this term. Who is our enemy? War on terror. You hear war on terror. Terror is not an enemy. It's a device that the enemy uses. We didn't declare in World War II war against blitzkriegs, so we want everybody in this room to go out here knowing that your enemy is the global jihad movement. Your enemy is the global jihad movement. Okay, now for some questions, and I want everybody to make sure that you like my page, because I'm told by, but then I can communicate with you and hear your ideas, and the more people I get on my page, I got a chance that someone might actually listen to me. So, question.
Mr. Fries, I'd like to know, I'm in the military and I know that you're a veteran, and I'd like to know what is the biggest thing that you really took away from your years of service that you've been able to bring into both the political world and also in the business world?
Well, in my military training, I probably learned how to peel potatoes better than anybody you believe. Somehow I had trouble dropping that quarter on the bed, and the sergeant says, okay, you're on KP, you better figure out how to do that. I think one of the things I learned from that experience was how important the people I was responsible for. I was trained as an infantry platoon leader, mainly. That was my main training. And it's a little bit like growing up on horseback. My Palomino and I would ride during the summers and round up 140 head of the little steers that I had to take care of. And so the Western cowboy ethic is very much ingrained in me. And one of those key tenets of the Cowboys Code of the West is ride for the brand. And I think America's brand is worth riding for, and I get very upset when so many of my fellow Republicans are not realizing what's at stake when they don't get completely behind the guy who won the nomination fair or square. We all want Cruz, so I was a Santorum guy, we all want somebody else, but the way the game works is America comes first, and there's no doubt as to who is going to be better for our grandchildren and for you and our children if we have a Hillary Clinton extension of the Obama administration. There's going to be at least three Supreme Court justices appointed. I don't care what other issue you want to talk about, immigration, health care, whatever you care about. Nothing comes close to the importance of that, because that will take away the right to preserve our lives and lives of our families. Yeah, it's right. The way Lenin gained control of a society and culture, he disabused them of the notion of God. He took away their guns, and he gave them the health care. That was the Lenin format. Saul Alinsky, who's, as you know, the Democrats' playbook. And I don't call these guys Democrats. I have a name for the Obama people. I call them the Chicago Sandinista Democrats. And their notion is, Saul Alinsky says, the way you control a society is you create more poor people. Why is it after 7 years with so much wealth that we have the market near highs? Why is it we have 47 million people on food stamps versus what we had 7 years ago? If you create more poor people, the Saul Alinsky point of view is you give them housing, you give them health care, you give them food stamps, and throw in a telephone, they're not going to vote for anybody that would want to take that away from them. So that's, the long-winded question answer, my life in the military learned that freedom is not free. And to see how many people pay the price is pretty, it's pretty. Do we have time for another question?
What particular advice or tips would you give to optimize opportunities or success to a student about to begin their college career?
To do what?
About to begin their college career. Like, what advice would you give to optimize opportunities and success?
In college?
Yeah.
In other words, if you're getting ready to enter
Yeah.
into a college career, maybe learn how to be a welder. What we have to work on, everybody in this room, we have to remember the 70% of the American people who don't have college degrees. The welders, the plumbers, the farmers, the hospitality workers, the people that make this country work. So to a certain extent, the college career has, the education industry is no different than the oil industry, the gas industry. These people are there to build their industry. And so they can hire more professors and create more administrators and more. It's an industry. And they basically have abused the American people in terms of having these kinds of tuitions of $50,000, $60,000 to learn jobs that basically when you graduate, you can't get a job that pays back the investment you've made. So I think that I would encourage you, the courses you take, try to find out, if I complete this course with success, how am I going to better provide for my family? What are the subjects I should take? And I haven't thought this out carefully, but in my mind, it would seem to make sense. I would love to have a system where you went into a shopping mall, and you had, there's math, there's calculus, there's history, there's different kinds of courses that you could unbundle, and so you could take what you want to take, and you should not require to take basket weaving in order to get your degree. You should be able to decide what you want to take. Another one out there.
Right here. Hi. Hi, I'm Kimber. I'm from Ohio, and I was wondering how to convince mostly liberals that the global jihadist movement is a huge threat to the United States without being called racist and Islamophobic.
Okay, well, a little bit. Can someone repeat the question?
Yeah.
That the jihad being a, okay, yes, that's an excellent question, and I think first of all, by using the term global jihad movement, you're not using the word Muslim, so that takes a little of the fire out of the liberals' belly right there and then. You know, there aren't very many Norwegian or Swedish jihadists, and how can you be opposed? And then also, some of you should get onto some of these services which tell you what Islam is all about. I find it quite ironic that so many of the liberals are not at all concerned about, in Pakistan, I'm told, Pakistan, 3 days ago, they took a homosexual and skinned him alive? I mean, how many people heard about that? I mean, that's unbelievable. And then they threw him off like an 8-story building. So now people say, well, that's not Islam. That's, you know, I was talking to Asa Hutchinson, governor of Arkansas, and he's very upset about Trump's statement about Muslims. And if he says any more about Muslims, I'm going to be upset because I know a couple Muslims and they're very nice people. Well, sure, there's nice people. There's plenty, but in Germany, there are plenty of nice people. They didn't want any part of the Nazis. So we have to remember, we know in the Christian community, there are people who handle snakes and speak in tongues. In the other end of the spectrum, there are Christians who might show up for Easter and Christmas, but have no clue what God's gift of Jesus' crucifixion means to allow each day to start anew, to accept people with all their imperfections or flaws, or to know because of that transaction of knowing him, that we know what our purpose in life is, to be a channel of his love to others, to be his hands and feet in a hurting world, to be a blessing to every person who's been on the path. They have no clue. So it is in the world of Islam. I sat in a man in Syria at the first university, private university in Syria a couple of years back. He was dressed like I was. He says, I drink alcohol, I eat pork, I don't go to Friday lectures, he says, but I just want to watch my kid play soccer and I want to build my business. But I'm a Muslim. Yesterday I talked at the Muhammad Ali funeral. I chatted with Karzai, the former president of Afghanistan, and a Secretary of State. And those people are victims of the people who want to embrace original Islam. Now keep in mind that if you read your history, Islam was started on the same basis that you now see the Islamic State using. So this whole idea, well, Islam has been a progressive religion. It was a violent religion from day one, and we all know that. But somehow we have to get people, to your point, you have to be bold and just help people understand what are some of the key principles and ask them, have you read the Quran? And now there are Muslims who would say, I'm Muslim light, or I'm a secular Muslim, I'm a cultural Muslim. Those people are the victims of the Islamic State. So I think when Donald Trump says, we shouldn't allow Muslims in the country for a while until we sort things out, in no way would he say Nikki Haley, Governor Haley's governor of South Carolina, Nikki Haley, her husband Michael is in Afghanistan, and they have been able to get their 2 Afghan Muslim interpreters in the United States. You think Donald Trump says, no, they can't come in? Well, Donald Trump is saying we just ought to know who's coming in and let's find out. Let's give President Obama a great big bowl of M&Ms and tell him, look, there's only 10 poisonous ones in there. Help yourself. I must have run out of time by now. Who's going to cut me off? Charlie or Steven? Somebody's got to tell me to go home.
Someone over here has a
Okay. What's right over here?
So you've talked a lot about messaging and how we need to be able to shape our message to reach more people. Do you have any advice on us on how to shape the words and the beliefs that we have in order to be able to connect with those people, rather than going on social media, going in the community, and speaking in words that could be taken as inflammatory by others, even if that's not how we intend them?
So your question is to how do we use the correct words so we're as winsome as possible and try to avoid words that we know are going to cause people to dig in? Is that your question?
Yes.
Well, that's exactly what you all have to think about. How do we, instead of saying how do we throw raw meat to the ones who are in the camp, how do we try to be so winsome that we bring other people into our belief system? And as part of that, I think we have to set an example of to cut the other side some slack. It was very disappointing when people jumped all over the Veterans Administration had Donaldson, because he said, well, at Disney World they have lines too, but it's the overall experience that people are concerned about. Immediately, a lot of our guys said, oh, he doesn't care about the veterans, that's an insensitive statement. Well, maybe it was, but what was in his heart? Did he really not care about the veterans, or he wouldn't have taken on the job? There could be a possibility this guy, we could have demanded he be fired for this insensitive statement, when he's probably done all kinds of 4 or 5 things to maybe improve the system. Let's look at the core of what the guy is achieving to find out if he should be fired or not. And so we have to be the examples. We can't count on the left to be winsome. We can't count on them to say we're going to bring people together, because another Saul Alinsky idea is, in order to gain power, you divide people. The 1%, the one rich against the poor, the women against the men, black against white, gay against straight. You look at every news item that they try to push at us, and they'll do that just intentionally. Another example, John Kerry, when the San Bernardino slaughter took place, he said, well, at least over at the he talked about Charlie Hebdo, where they had a demeaning picture of Muhammad, you remember, on the front page of that paper they're printing, and they killed those guys. Kerry said, well, at least there was some legitimacy to that. Now, he didn't mean legitimate. What he meant was at least there was a catalyst that was understandable. And he instantly corrected himself. He said, I didn't mean legitimate. But there's a good possibility that he would have left that stand for a while. So our side has to be able to be less aggressive in terms of trying to play gotcha with people in terms of what they said, and be more aggressive and confrontational when they lie. Right now, on this Judge Curiel situation, they say Trump's a racist because he doesn't think a Mexican heritage judge can have a unbiased opinion. Well, if you were to ask, can a white guy be impartial when he's adjudicating a civil rights case for a black guy? Sure, you would say. But would you say if the guy was a member of the Ku Klux Klan? He wouldn't be impartial. Now, I'm not saying Curiel is a member of the Ku Klux Klan, but what I am saying, it's very hard for him his background, his position, to be objective in terms of Donald Trump's situation. Because number one, he was appointed by Obama. He's definitely on the other side. And he was a member of, as I understand this, he's a member of the Hispanic Lawyers Association. Now, what was the Hispanic Lawyers Association? It was a rename in 1984 of the La Raza Lawyers Association. Now, all of our guys, I had a shouting match at the Muhammad Ali thing with Arnold Schwarzenegger and Steve Wynn of the Wynn Hotels about, they said he ought to apologize, he ought to apologize. The truth was that La Raza is a group. Now, there's an advocacy group called La Raza, and there's the La Raza attorneys, which are separate. But one could assume that this guy might have some intention to be sympathetic to the La Raza mission, which is to regain the lands that Mexico had lost to the United States. The La Raza group has a name called, I think it was Atzilan, A-T-Z-I-A-N, something like that, which is a name they give to all the land, Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, California, Oregon, all the way up into parts of Washington, which is the land that they want to regain and reunite with Mexico. Now, our guys, instead of saying Trump ought to apologize, ought to have said, hey, wait a minute, what is La Raza, and what was this guy's connection to it? And why do we have him belong to the Hispanic Lawyers Association rather than the Indiana Bar Association? Isn't the word La Raza, which means in English the race, isn't that racist in itself? And why do we allow the other side to use, for instance, we've got to get rid of all these hyphenated Americans. I have a friend, Kevin Jackson's a radio show, and he says, I don't want to be called an African American, I want to be called black. Because America is only going to thrive and prosper as we get rid of African American, Hispanic American, Norwegian America. We have to be Americans. One more, I guess. Two more. One more. Yeah.
Hi, my name's Grace. I'm from North Carolina. I wanted to ask you, I think that there's a big misconception about the conservative movement, and that we're not, I think a lot of people on the left perceive us to not be compassionate and to not care about other people because we don't support free health care and we want to cut welfare and stuff. How do you think we can change the conversation to show that we want to make it so that people are able to empower themselves? So we don't want to just say oh yeah, you're not going to be able to feed your kids. No, we want to make it so that you can do that, but you're on welfare temporarily, and then you can get yourself out and work so that we can empower the individual American families. How do we change the conversation to show them that we're not that we're not compassionate, that we actually want better for the people that need help.
The way you do that, by confronting him eyeball to eyeball and say what you just exactly said. That's the answer. We have to say it, and we have to demonstrate it. You know, I'm very tough on President Obama because I think he's done more to add dissension to our country. And this whole idea that we have the first black president, well, I was kind of excited about that. I kind of like that. But how do we call the United States racist if you have a black president with only 20% black residents? And this whole idea, we have to have a black, because he's black, that's racist. We was voted in by many people because he was black. Now, you know, how'd that work out for us? And now there's people, well, we have to have Hillary Clinton because we need to have a woman as president to make some kind of a point. How's that going to turn out for us? That's not going to work out very well, I don't think. And so for Madeleine Albright, Secretary of State, to say there's a special place in hell reserved for any woman who doesn't help other women, why isn't that sexist? And so the other way you deal with this, to answer your question, is you demonstrate love. And you show how you have done what you're trying to articulate and convince should be done, how you've done it. No one can accuse me of being a racist, because when I was 17 years old, Governor Vernon Thompson, not Tommy Thompson, the governor of Wisconsin appointed me to the Youth Advisory Board of the Wisconsin Human Rights Commission. And as a 17-year-old guy, I was going out to the motels in my little town of Rice Lake, Wisconsin, challenge them and encourage them, hey, why should they weren't taking blacks and Jews into the motels. And at 17 years old, I confronted them. You should be taking anybody. This is America. And so demonstrate what you want to believe by your actions and what you do. Look at the Koch brothers, how many millions of dollars they've given to all kinds of research items, $35 million to the Smithsonian for a dinosaur exhibit. Sure, that's not the same thing, but you look at where all of the wonderful things are happening to people who need a lift up, and all the companies are providing jobs. I went to a bat mitzvahs one time, and I couldn't understand a lot was going on, so I was reading through the book, and it helped me understand the pronunciation. Maimonides, who knows the exact term, Maimonides? He's a famous Jewish philosopher, I guess. Maimonides. So in there he says, here is the criteria of charity. First of all, when the donor is anonymous. Then secondly, when both the donor and the recipient are anonymous. Then thirdly, I think, when both are anonymous. And then I think the ultimate act of charity, or doing good for people, is providing them a job. And I think that's the greatest thing that our American system has, is looking how many people we have brought out of poverty because of our system of free markets, where each one of you and I get to vote for our dollars, which products. Is Wendy's going to survive, or is McDonald's going to survive? If you're in a government system, the government would pick one of them. Anytime the government engages itself in providing some kind of a service, we create the opportunity for dissension. If you want to have a Chevrolet, you want to have a Buick, go to it. You want to have a Ford? Fine. Now suddenly the government starts issuing cars, you become political enemies. It's happened in education. It's happened in medicine. It's happened in the tax code. The tax code, you tax people when people die. The homosexual community there's the biggest thing. I have a gay brother-in-law, and his partner died, and as a result, they chased my brother-in-law for 20 years because he had to pay the taxes, where if he were married, he wouldn't have to. Now, I'm not espousing that we should have gay marriage. What I'm making the point is, if we got rid of the death tax, it wouldn't be an issue. And so that's what we have to do, is try to minimize the involvement of government in our lives to end the dissension, where we're no longer political enemies, but we're all pulling on the same thing. Last one. One more.
No, that's all we have. Everyone give Mr. Freeze a hand. Thank you.
I came all the way here from Wyoming. Thank you very much. Thanks. Bye-bye.